Ezekiel 33:3.
So now we're going to take a look at who funds the WHO.
Sounds like a song title.
So I went to the World Health Organization website, and there's a section that's called, under the About section, it's called Planning, Finance, and Accountability. How is the WHO funded? So they outright tell you. Where does the WHO get its funding? WHO gets its funding from two main sources: member states paying their assessed contributions, that's country membership dues, and voluntary contributions from member states and other partners. Okay, so then if you are a member of the WHO, United Nations, you're one of the member states, you have to pay money based on your GDP, which we see in the next line. It says assessed contributions, AC, are a percentage of the country's gross domestic product, the percentage which is agreed by the UN General Assembly. Member states approve them every 2 years at the World Health Assembly. So basically what happens is Canada, the United States, all the member states, what they do is they say, look, we made this much in our GDP. We made this much money this year. Okay, the UN General Assembly then takes a look and says, this is the percentage that you owe the WHO. That's how that's decided. The other way that WHO receives funding is through partners. So for example, if you decided you want to partner with the WHO, let's say you were an NGO, you're a non-government organization, you could partner with them and say, hey, I will give you $2 million per year. Now they can't obviously barter with you because you're doing this as a donation. Only the member states are the ones that they barter with based on their GDP. But this tells you something very important. That means that the WHO's funding comes solely from external entities. So in other words, whoever pays the most would probably have a significant amount of sway, considering the WHO isn't generating funding unless it's a donation. Okay, this is coming out of their mouth. So this leads us into the next point, which is Bill Gates, the richest man in the world. Because as of the last couple of years, all of a sudden, this guy who was running Microsoft, and he was the richest man in the world in 1999. We're actually going to go through all the money that Bill Gates had. We're going to take a look at how much money Bill Gates lost, and we're going to see how he got it back. Okay? And when we look at the connections here, we're going to see that after Bill Gates left Microsoft, he was making money faster than when he was in Microsoft. So for a philanthropist that's donating money away, he obviously can't donate enough money because he just keeps making money. Or maybe that's just part of a plan that he has. Let's take a look. Here's why Jeff Bezos is not truly the richest person in history. This is Forbes magazine, and this is from 2 years ago. It states, Gates, who is now worth an estimated $92 billion, would also be far richer if he had not given about $36 billion of Microsoft stock to charity over time, mostly to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the planet's largest private philanthropic foundation. Okay, so the largest charity in the world is Bill Gates' charity. Now I want you to think for a second. Bill Gates didn't give money to charity. Bill Gates gave money to his own charity, okay? So you got to think about this for a second. I don't know if you know this. If anyone knows the United Way, does anyone have an idea how much the United Way CEO makes? And keep in mind, he doesn't own it.
Over $1 million.
The United Way CEO, the current one, makes over $1.3 million a year. The President of the United States makes $400,000 American a year. So you can see that it's a really good racket to own your own charity, because through charities, there's not as much regulation and there's much larger payouts for some of these CEOs than you'll see in a private company. So here we see that Bill Gates donated $36 billion, but he donated $36 billion to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, I'm going to show you exactly how the money's spent. I'm going to go through all those details because people really have no idea when they watch these videos on Netflix, because he looks like a really great guy. If I only watched the videos on Netflix, I think he was awesome.
Lots of people think he's awesome.
Now, here's something you have to take a look at. This site's called NerdWallet. It's called 2020 Capital Gain Tax Rates and how you calculate your bill. Okay, so obviously when you conduct your taxes, there's things like your stocks, there's things like your charitable donations. Some people, for example, will try to dodge going into a higher tax bracket by donating to a charity. Okay, so let's just do some rough calculations. They have a calculator on the site. First off, what is capital gains tax? Capital gains are the profits from the sale of an asset, the shares of stock, a piece of land, a business, and are generally considered a taxable income. Capital gains tax rates on most assets held for less than a year correspond to the ordinary income tax brackets: 10%, 12%, 22%, 24%, 32%, 35%, as high as 37%. So in other words, Bill Gates, if he was to take stocks and then give those stocks over to a charitable organization, he would avoid taxes that would be applied to that, which would be called capital gains tax. If we use their calculator on their site, we can get another, like, I don't know how much he gave away. I know he had a lot of stocks, but let's just get a rough idea. I put in for the capital gains tax calculator $1 million, okay? $1 million, and let's say that my $1 million went up by 30%, okay? Pretty good year. So 30%, I now have, $1.3 million. My pre-tax gain is $300,000. So if you look at the bottom here, applicable federal capital gains tax rate for a single filer would be 32%. So that means that 32% of the profit that I made on my stocks, I would have to give to the government. But if I gave it to a nonprofit charity, guess what? I wouldn't get this tax. It's totally different. Wow. So then Bill Gates, by taking his stocks and giving those stocks in a charitable donations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is his foundation, has his name in it, he avoids the 32% that you have to pay in the capital gains tax.
It'd be 0%, right?
It'd be zero, yeah. Because charities, when it comes to a donation, if you donate stocks to a charity, that's not tax. There are other taxes that a charity has to pay. They're much lower, but if it's giving stocks, different story, okay?
Wow.
So basically, he just saved himself a whole bunch of money. Now, I'm going to point something out. Bill Gates had the most money he ever had in 1999. Does anyone know what happened to Bill Gates in 1999 and the reason why he stepped down from Microsoft?
Microsoft versus the government.
That's right, Microsoft versus the US government. In 1999, Bill Gates had basically been brought up in charges with Netscape and all these other third parties where they said Microsoft is trying to run a monopoly by putting proprietary code into their Windows operating system to make sure that our internet browsers fail. And what were they found? They were found guilty.
Wow.
That went on for quite a period of time. I have the videos. There's like 10 hours of videos on YouTube. If you ever want to see someone talk very deceptively, watch Bill Gates in those videos from 1999. He is so slick with his words that he pretends that he doesn't know what the word definition is. So he says, you're going to have to define the word definition so I understand what your word of definition means, because my word definition might be different than your word definition. This went on for 10 hours and it was just childish. So for someone who's this great philanthropist, this very honest man, if you watch even 2 hours, an hour, watch 30 minutes of him debating back and forth during this trial, the way that he commanded his words, you can tell he's a very deceptive man when he uses his words. That's my opinion, but watch it for yourself. So here's what happened. Let's take a look. 1998, the bottom of this chart, we can see Bill Gates is worth $51 billion net worth, adjusted net worth 77.6. Then in 1999, this is when he lost it all. It was Bill Gates at 90 billion, so he went up by 40 billion because of Microsoft, and then $134.6 billion. So if we take a look at the Business Insider on the left-hand side there, in 2000, his net worth was still 90 billion. This must have been just before this was recalculated on the other side here. This is actually coming from Forbes. So on the right-hand side, that's coming from Forbes. I'll show you the article. Left-hand side is Business Insider. Regardless, the loss was $40 billion. So Business Insider said by the end of 2000, a 45% drop in Microsoft stock based on the antitrust trials and the dot-com bust had stripped the software genius down to 60 billion. So that US court case versus Microsoft and the dot-com bubble bust, I'm sure you heard of that in the year 2000, those two things cost this man $40 billion. He must have been pissed off. Now, if we take a look in 2000, Bill Gates made it to 60 billion. So we can see the drop in Forbes was actually the drops in Business Insider was about $10 billion more, but it really depends. Was this taken near beginning of the year, mid-year? Maybe Business Insider took this near the end of the year. We see the adjusted value is 86.5 billion, and then we can just see that it drops. So in 2001, it drops more. Now he has 58 billion, and then his adjusted net worth drops some more. And then 2002 drops some more. Now keep in mind, when did Bill Gates make the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? After he left Microsoft. So in 2000, 1999, right, when this court trial was wrapping up, that's when he said, forget it, I'm stepping down as the CEO of Microsoft. I will keep my shares, but I'm going to go into philanthropy. So in other words, he's going to find a new way to make money. Keep in mind, this man just lost $40 billion. He was the richest man in the world. So I would assume that after losing that much money, I would think he'd want it back, right? I think he'd want to make some of that money back. But how would you make it back through philanthropy? That doesn't make much sense. Isn't philanthropy when you give away money?
You give away money, yeah.
So if you take a look, you can see in 2008, Bill Gates was no longer the richest man. His wealth dropped to the point where Warren Buffett now exceeded him. So now Warren Buffett was the richest man in the world. And then in 2009, he dropped to 40 billion. So 40 billion was the lowest number the Bill Gates legacy of his net worth had ever dropped. Okay. And from there, it started to climb all of a sudden. So let's take a look. We see at its lowest, it was 2009, $40 billion and 464 billion adjusted net worth. In 1999, that was when it was at its highest. It was 90 billion and 134.6 billion for his adjusted net worth. In 2017, he's up to 87 billion. Okay, so something between 2009 and 2017 allowed Bill Gates to nearly double his money. So if you're thinking, great, Bill Gates is this great philanthropist, he gives away all this money, that's fine. You can have that opinion, but you're going to have to explain to me how he can give away billions of dollars, but yet almost double his earnings. Because now he's still the richest man in the world. So Bill Gates, as of today, 2020, is worth $113.8 billion. Don't believe it? Google it. All you have to do is Google Bill Gates net worth. So it doesn't seem to matter how much money Bill Gates gives away. He just keeps getting more and more and more. I wish I was blessed like that. Not really. Bill Gates made $26.8 billion through philanthropic efforts between 2017 and 2020. So where am I getting that from? Well, if we saw on this last chart here from Forbes that he had $86 billion or 87, if we look, if you got up to 113 billion, that's a $26.8 billion increase. That's a net increase of 30.8%. So Bill Gates is doing all this charitable stuff around the world. He's giving away billions and billions of dollars. We all see it. We've seen the Netflix episode. I mean, how does this man then accumulate an extra 30% of his total wealth? So my question, how did Bill Gates make $26.8 billion in 3 years without a job while giving away money? Now, here's something interesting. We looked at the WHO and we said that the contributions to the WHO, those were all contributions of either member states or partners. Well, if we look, the number one contributor, United States of America. That makes sense. They've got the biggest economy. They're the world trade dollar. Second is United Kingdom. But look who's third, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So are you telling me that Bill Gates gives out as much money or gives out more money than most countries in the world, but almost as much money as the highest donator of the WHO? You wonder why Bill Gates is on television now for all this vaccine stuff. And you wonder why he's like the lead guy for coronavirus. If you were giving $455 billion to an organization, 455 million, sorry, to an organization, don't you think that you'd have some ability to talk on a podium? If you take a look, United States is higher, but I want you to take a look at this organization beneath Bill Gates. It says the Gavi Alliance. Gavi Alliance is $388.7 million. So I'm going to show you how the Gavi Alliance has connections to Bill Gates, because in actuality, Bill Gates gives away more money than anyone in the WHO. Than anyone who's funding the WHO. So here's Gavi. Here's the website, gavi.org, if you want to check it out. If you look under investing in Gavi, look whose logo is there. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right at the top of the page. I'm like, well, why is that? How much do they invest exactly? So a little bit farther down the page, if you scroll down, you'll find this block. It says, as a founding partner of Gavi, the Gates Foundation has brought international attention to the cause of immunization and has made several commitments to Gavi, totaling US dollars $4.1 billion to date. So he founded Gavi. He's a founding partner. So he doesn't just own the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he owns Gavi. So when we go back and we look at this chart here, when we look at Gavi Foundation plus the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, now we can see why he has so much influence in the WHO. He's the #1 donor.
Wow.
At the Berlin Pledging Conference in 2015, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation announced US dollar $1.5 billion for Gavi's next 2016 to 2020 strategic period. Contributions and pledges in total. So these are all of Gates' contributions since the year 2000, since he stepped away from Microsoft. So when Bill Gates tells you, I've given over $4 billion to charities, it's like, yes, you've given over $4 billion to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and to Gavi, which are both your own charities. So basically, you just moved your money from one pocket into the other, and everyone claps for you when you do it. And you get big tax write-offs.
Wow.
Very different perspective now.
Yeah.
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation pledges $1.6 billion to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to protect the next generation with life-saving vaccines. So I've got a question for you. How do you think he's making more money? It must, because if he just moves money around, that's just saving money on taxes. But his money isn't staying the same. He's going up 30%. So if he's going up in 30%, he must have some kind of a business venture that's allowing him to do that. You know what the key word here is? Vaccine. So now when you see all these people pushing vaccines, remember the NIH makes a ludicrous amount of money from vaccines. CDC, obviously, the directors, obviously. So perhaps Bill Gates and all this philanthropic efforts are really him just basically making money from the vaccine game because it seems to be quite lucrative. So again, if we take a look, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Gavi, that's $455.3 million plus $388.7 million. Bill Gates donates 0.9% less than the highest contributor, which is the United States.
Wow.
I did the percentage. So here's the next thing. We all know what happened in June. What did Donald Trump do? Donald Trump axed all the funding going to the WHO. So question, who is the #1 donor to the WHO? Bill Gates, through his two organizations, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Gavi. So expect to see him on every single channel as the hero that's going to save you from the coronavirus. Let's look at Gavi's financial reports because I want to try to figure out how much money he's making through Gavi. We're also going to take a look at the financial reports of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You can go take a look at these yourselves. It's on gavi.org, and their financial reports are located on the top of the screen. So I'm looking at December 31st, 2009. So here's how you have to read these. When they read these, I mean, Blue Cross does the same thing in our financial reports. We don't put all the zeros. So what you see is you see 6792700, but if you notice at the top here, it says in thousands of US dollars. You have to add 3 more zeros. A lot of companies do this when they make the annual reports. So it's not $6 million, it's $6.7 billion. So in 2009, they had made in their total assets $6.7 billion. That's a great financial report, okay? Now we're gonna take a look at 2018. In 2018, $7.9 billion in assets. Okay, so you just keep moving up here. For a not-for-profit here, you must be doing something to keep going up. I mean, you went up 1.7 or 1 point something billion dollars in about a 10-year period. Hang on, I just heard a beep. I just want to make sure I don't get kicked off here. Okay, good. So Gavi. With Gavi, we can see that there was a 16.9% increase from the years of 2009 to 2018 when we look at the total assets. And I'm grabbing these right from their financial statements on their website. And remember, Gavi is Bill Gates. Now we're going to look at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Who are we? And I looked at their financials. If you see them on the left-hand side, you can go check it out yourself. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation consolidated financial statements from December 31st, 2019 and 2018. So that's the most recent one I could find. There's no 2020, obviously, because we haven't finished the year yet. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And again, you can see here the number is in thousands. And then we see these numbers here, 2018. It looks like it says 51 million. It's 51 billion. And then 47 million. If we're not 47 million, that's 47 billion. So between 2018 and 2020, whoops, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation made an increase of how much?
10 billion or 4 billion.
4 billion. They made over 4 billion in 1 year. Okay, plus Gavi. Don't forget Gavi. And don't forget that he probably takes some of this money and he invests it as well. So that's where more money is being generated. It's like he's just making money from 2 nonprofits. So then we take a look at 2008 and 2009. We have 2008, 29 billion. And then we have 2008, 29 billion, almost 30 billion. And then 2009, 33 billion. So he seems to go up by $4 billion per year. with his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and this was going back to 2009. So if we compare 2009 to 2019, that's 10 years, he has made a 50.6% increase in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, okay? Because he had 33 billion, and then he's up to 51 billion. Here's another department that Bill Gates donates money to. It's called OCHA. OCHA is the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, to strengthen the international response to complex emergencies and natural disasters. Okay, so COVID would fall under the complex emergencies. So I guess with Bill Gates being such a great humanitarian, great philanthropist, I want to see how much money he provided for OCHA and COVID-19, because I keep seeing him talk about vaccines and how everything's going to be better and he's going to fix the coronavirus. I want to see how much he donated to OCHA. So if we take a look, the #1 donation was by Germany. So the government of Germany, they donated $131 million. So Germany gave a total of $131 million to the COVID-19 Disease Outbreak Disaster Fund. Bill Gates didn't show up until 1,251 on this list. Now, if you remember from the WHO piece that I showed you a couple slides back, he was above Germany, okay? Germany was 358. So he definitely has the money if he wanted to make a donation that was considerable to what Germany made, okay? But what was his donation? His donation was $300,000. His donation of $300,000 went to two places. One was Bangladesh, the other one was Somalia. So the total incoming fund was $3 billion, 400 million and some, okay? Out of that money, Gates gave 0.086%. That was his donation. So obviously, this must not be worthwhile to him, okay? Because if he can provide the WHO with all this money so he has a microphone to talk on, you would think that he could give money to the COVID disaster relief. But here's the difference. The money that he gives to the WHO, it gives him an outlet to speak on. It allows him to go into different countries and then solicit different vaccines such as Gardasil. This is just throwaway money. Any money he gives to this COVID fund, he can't make anything off of this. However, there was a reason why he donated money to Bangladesh and Somalia. This guy does not give away a dollar unless he can get a rate of return. So let's take a look. Why Bangladesh and why Somalia? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to help Bangladesh vaccination programs. When was this? September 27th, 2019. Okay, so basically half a year before the coronavirus, before he made this donation, he started to get into negotiations with Bangladesh to start selling them vaccinations. And remember, when he sells them vaccines, it's the government that pays for it through the tax dollars, and every single person that's basically purchased through government. Okay, great deal. So he's trying to get in there and be sweet. This is what the leader said. She said, not a single person in the Rohingya refugee camps has died of any type of disease that could be prevented by immunization, she said. So she's like, I don't need your services, Bill Gates. Bill Gates replies. In reply, Bill Gates said, they are ready to help Bangladesh in its vaccination programs. He informed the Prime Minister that they have developed a new type of vaccine that can help protect people from various diseases like typhoid and cholera. So she says, we don't know of any vaccines that can help the people who died in these refugee camps. He rebuttals with, well, we've got a new one. Children in Somalia to receive vaccination against deadly diseases. Now, this is going back to 2013. It says Somalia defies destroyed health system. Bill Gates is infamous for going into places that are third world, that are undereducated, in some cases can't even read. That's how he gets a lot of these programs to get passed through. Not the leaders, but the people that are accepting in these different villages. And then he reassures them that this is a good thing for them to get these different protections. And especially in places like Somalia, where their healthcare system it's done. They've been war-torn. They have so many issues in that country that they don't really have a healthcare system. More than 1.3 million doses of pentavalent vaccine have been provided to Somalia for 2013 and will be used to immunize children under 1 year of age. Pentavalent vaccines will be delivered to 425 children born each year in Somalia through existing health structures, as well as community health workers at a district level. Each child will require 3 doses of the vaccine. Where did I get this information from? Gavi. What's Gavi? His company, right? His nonprofit. So then you can tell, going back to 2013, he's making money every year through Somalia for the vaccines that he gives to these children.
Bill Gates, for so long the world's richest man, who famously announced he would give most of it away and spend his time and vast resources on the world's poor. His foundation, worth more than $50 billion, run with his wife and investor Warren Buffett, has, with great success, targeted massive killers like malaria, TB and AIDS in the developing world. Yet as Mr. Gates' powerful friends gather in Davos, the latest warning that the Gates Foundation has become too powerful and may not be the force for good so many world leaders say it is. The study from the pressure group Global Justice Now paints a picture of the Gates Foundation partly as an expression of corporate America's desire to profit from Africa and partly a damning critique of its effects.
You could have a case where the initial research is done by a Gates-funded institution. The media reporting on how well that research is conducted is done. The media outlet is a Gates-funded outlet and maybe a Gates-funded journalist from a media programme, and then the programme is implemented more widely by a Gates-funded NGO. I mean, there are some very insular circles here.
Among the many criticisms, the idea that private finance can solve the problems of the developing world. Should poor farmers be trapped into debt by having to use chemicals or fertilisers underwritten by offshoots of the foundation? Private finance initiatives like the one behind this hospital in Lesotho, paid for partly by Mr. Gates' philanthropy, also come under attack. The repayments for this now cost Lesotho more than 50% of its entire health budget. Some aid experts have warned repeatedly that the focus on high-profile, headline-grabbing diseases undermines wider attempts by African governments to reduce the poverty that causes them.
They've not been interested with looking at strengthening the health system as a whole. What they've been much more interested in has been around the delivery of very specific interventions, albeit interventions that are important, but they've not considered the long-term requirements for sustainability and also the requirements for all the other diseases and interventions that are also important in parts of Africa.
Global Justice Now had this response from the Gates Foundation to its report.
The private sector has access to innovations, for example in science, medicine and technology, that can save lives. And we believe that the role of philanthropy is to take risks where others can't or won't. The good news is that by working together in this way, we've made incredible progress.
Supporters of philanthropy would argue that it can get past corrupt governments and produce results without having to go through the bureaucracy of the United Nations. But critics of Mr. Gates ask whether it's right that one foundation with more money than entire African countries should wield so much power and influence. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera, London.
Okay, so this is important. I mean, what's going on here is you're seeing that people that are actually working in these hospitals are mentioning the fact that he's targeting very specific diseases, but not targeting everything. And he's not necessarily looking at it from a holistic view where he's helping these hospitals or helping these countries basically prosper. What he's doing, obviously, is he's targeting things where he can make a profit, okay? That's why he's not interested in the whole healthcare program. He's just interested in certain parts. Now, when he comes and he helps them build a hospital, obviously these countries feel indebted because now they have this new healthcare resource, and then they feel more obligated to take some of these offerings of the different vaccines, which he's also making money from. So if we take a look here, we can see this is on the Gates Foundation's website, and it shows their breakdown in regards to how their efforts are basically, placed in the Gates Foundation. Their efforts are mainly going towards two things: polio, which is a polio vaccine, and then vaccine delivery. And we're going to cover that in just a second. That's 54% of their efforts are tackling things that are either delivery of vaccines or a vaccine in general. On Gavi, it says the foundation's initial 5-year pledge of $750 million in 1999 provided the seed money to launch Gavi. Okay, so again, he's the founder, right? Vaccine market shaping. The Gates Foundation plays both a technical and financial role in the Vaccine Alliance's efforts to shape vaccine markets. The foundation invests in activities ranging from vaccine discovery through development to delivery.
This vaccine work is the biggest program for the Gates Foundation, and that's because it is so impactful. It's incredible value. It utterly changes a country to have the newest vaccines saving children's lives.
So there's no question then that the number one source of revenue for these two nonprofits would obviously be Gates through his nonprofit agencies. So we just saw him speaking in front of Gavi. Gavi is one of the obviously companies he founded, or not for profit. We can see on CNN report, it says Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation vaccine empire on trial in India. Lots of people have brought this up. This happened years ago. I mean, this article's from 2014, but Bill Gates is still wanted for questioning for damages that he did in Africa through his vaccinations. In India through his vaccinations.
Gates Foundation mission shut down in India for their big pharma ties. And we grabbed this via India Times. India has shut down Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on a critical national health mission and possible conflict of interest issues arising from the foundation's ties with pharmaceutical companies being just one of the reasons. All financial ties of the country's immunization advisory body with the Gates Foundation have been cut off. India Times has learned that the government's decision was informed by, among other factors, arguments from senior medical professionals centered around conflict of interest issues. There were questions about the Gates Foundation's ties with pharmaceutical companies and the possible influence this may have had on the country's vaccination strategy. Global Policy Forum raised some of these concerns in a study from December 2015 called Philanthropic Power and Development, Who Shapes the Agenda? It cautioned on the growing influence, whether sought or unsought, of the large global philanthropic foundations, especially the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, on political discourse and agenda setting.
Controversial vaccine studies. Why is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation under fire from critics in India? This is the Economic Times. This I found kind of interesting. Correlation between non-polio acute flaccid paralysis rates with pulse polio frequency in India. The abstract says the last case of polio from India was reported in 2011. That year, the non-polio acute flaccid paralysis, NPAFP, rate in India was 13.35 per 100,000, where the expected rate is supposed to be 1 to 2 per 100,000. A previous study of the data from 2000 to 2010 has detailed that the NPAFP rate in a state correlated with the pulse polio rounds conducted there, and the strongest correlation with the NPAFP rate was found when the number of doses from the previous 4 years were used. I'm going to show you what that means. The Gates Foundation funded Immunization Technical Support Unit, ITSU, had so far served as the secretariat of the NTAGI, which is the country's apex immunization advisory body and decides on vaccines that should become a part of the government immunization program.
Since 1988, over $4 billion has been paid out from the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. Despite the government admitting to and paying $4 billion for vaccine injuries, no informed consent is used or required when you vaccinate your child.
So essentially, the program was developed in 1988. Congress set up this special program, and it is administered through the Office of Special Masters in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. That is a court of special jurisdiction in Washington, D.C. So we have a whole procedure that's set forth for what we call a vaccine court. And essentially, they set forth this process whereby people can come and file petitions for claims for vaccine injuries, because you can't always sue the manufacturer. Cases
against vaccines are handled totally different than supposedly frivolous lawsuits. You may not know this, but there's something called the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. This is a national program that was put into place in America in 1986, and 75 cents out of every dollar from a child's vaccine is a tax that goes into that program. Since 1988, $4 billion have been handed out through it. The former head of the vaccine court, Chief Special Master Denise Vowell, said about the program, "It is a no-fault compensation program designed to encourage vaccination, encourage vaccine manufacturers to continue making vaccines, and to compensate the small but significant number of people who are injured by a vaccine they receive." Simply put, the government wants vaccines to happen, and they do not want medical research companies feeling like they could get sued for making a vaccine. And not only that, the government basically mandates vaccines through local and state levels, forcing any kid who attends public school to receive one. If you happen to create one of these mandated vaccines, the returns are incredible. And of course, your profit can't be lost due to lawsuits. The tax covers that. Now, it's very important that we establish the amount of money that vaccines can bring in, because this brings us to our current pandemic and situation. I'm sure you've never heard the word vaccine said so many times in your life as you have recently. The talk about a miracle vaccine is so prevalent that it's being hailed as the savior of humanity whenever it comes. Many people agree that a possible worldwide mandated vaccine is coming. Some are saying that this is the mark of the beast and the end of the world. This is how the lizard people will control us. What if I told you it's actually much more simple than that? It's about money, potentially $1 trillion. And that is not an exaggeration. Let's look at the math here. Suppose the average cost of a vaccine is $25, not very much. I think we could all agree that is reasonable. Now let's say you mandate every person in the world has to take the vaccine yearly, and that's not that far-fetched. Over 5 years, the company that wins the patent for this vaccine would cash in over $1 trillion at a $25 price point. And guess who's out there leading the charge to push for the mandatory vaccine? That's right, our old friend Bill Gates. Gates, the face of the worst case scenario for this sickness, announced that he would spend billions of dollars to build 7 factories capable of making all the necessary vaccines. What a guy. Remember, he runs a nonprofit. You see, nonprofits are structured for less regulation, which allows Gates to pump these vaccines out quicker and with less responsibility. He's not donating billions. He's investing in these factories in hopes of cashing in on his $1 trillion gamble. I know, it sounds crazy. Well, just wait. Bill Gates has been pushing the narrative for mandatory vaccines for a long time. In fact, in 2010, with the help of his foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he joined health leaders all around the world in launching what they called the Decade of Vaccines Collaboration. This is a real thing. And this is where things go haywire. It is hard to deny the overlapping connections between this announcement and our current crisis. And you start to connect the dots here. You wonder, how could Bill Gates possibly be so powerful he could shape the entire narrative of this disease? Well, when the two most central figures of this whole pandemic are your best friends, it can be easy. The Decade of Vaccines initiative was meant to coordinate and create a global vaccine action plan. So who were the top 2 leaders involved in bringing global vaccines to the forefront? Well, the Director General of the World Health Organization, and none other than Dr. Anthony Fauci. While the Director General of the WHO is different now, and I can't possibly pronounce his name, Bill Gates has had his claws in the WHO, which is the UN's health organization, for years. In fact, if Donald Trump were to actually withdraw US funding like he's threatened to WHO, Bill Gates would be their largest donor. Think about that. He's literally giving more money to that organization than any country on earth outside of the United States. Think he's got some pull there?
Because you can't always sue the manufacturer.
Because you can't always sue the manufacturer.
Since 1988, over $4 billion has been paid out from the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program.
So what you can see here is Bill Gates is structured in a position where he's got the perfect business. For one, reduce taxes because he has not-for-profit charities. Secondly, they're not that regulated. See, if you work for Merck or you work for Bayer or you work for another pharmaceutical industry, there's strict regulations for some of these labs. But of course, if you hide behind a veil of a not-for-profit, the rules are a lot different. So you've got that going for you. Plus, here's the other piece. If Bill Gates was to injure people, all the countries that are administering this vaccine, they've got these compensation programs where the tax dollars pay for the injuries. Bill Gates will never have to pay for anyone he injures. That's how it is already. It's been that way since the 80s. So that means that anyone who is injured from a vaccine that's going to be made faster than the fastest vaccine in history. Keep in mind, the fastest vaccine was made in 1963, and it took 4 to almost 5 years. We're looking to have this done probably, I don't know, sometime in the fall, maybe early new year. Well, that would be the new fastest vaccine in 3/4 of the time, okay? So people are going to put themselves in the position where they're hoping that basically they will protect themselves from something that might actually be worse than what's actually out there, okay? And the problem is that the accountability will not be there because Bill Gates or whoever will put this together, they'll be protected by these compensation programs where the tax dollars will pay for all the injuries. It's the perfect business. This is way better than anything he had with Microsoft, which is why you see that his wealth keeps going up so quickly, because there's no way that someone could just throw away billions of dollars and then just keep doubling their income, unless of course they're reinvesting as a profit. So you can see in this situation here, when he was talking about Bill Gates is not donating money. Bill Gates is investing for the future. Keep in mind, he's the richest man in the world, okay? If you would think that anyone would have the amount of control that they would have, wouldn't you suspect one of the richest people in the world would be that person?
His personal net worth too.
His personal.
Not with his company.
No, they're like when Forbes is talking about him being a billionaire, they're talking about his net wealth. They're not counting his assets of his not-for-profit. That wouldn't be fair. So here's something I thought was interesting, because there's been lots of claims that vaccines haven't hurt people. We know that's not the case. But again, I'm not against vaccines. I'm like, do your research. Don't just poke yourself with things thinking that because, well, they said on TV it was fine. There's a lot of money going through this industry. That's why they'll tell you that it's fine. There's too many hands in the pot. And so here you can see a polio vaccine. This was an early one too. It was contaminated. And look what happened here. This data suggests that there may be an increased incidence of certain cancers among 98 million persons exposed to contaminated polio vaccine in the US. Further investigations are clearly justified. Okay, so a lot of people have got this vaccine already. This is very similar to the vaccine that Gates is pushing in his polio programs. So a lot of people are getting cancer, and since they can't tell where cancer came from, they're not even aware that these research papers existed. It could have possibly been from a vaccine they've taken, but of course there's no way for them to follow up because this is called a soft kill. A soft kill means that you can't determine what exactly caused the cancer, therefore you cannot prosecute. You can't go to a vaccine lawyer and go to the vaccine court.
Well, it's the same thing with Chernobyl, right? How many people have died of Chernobyl? But in reality, the death toll of Chernobyl was 33 people.
Yeah,
how many people died of cancer from Chernobyl?
If you watch the documentaries on Chernobyl, the death rate from Chernobyl was under 100 people, but like, let's be realistic here. The amount of people that were either indirectly, or just not being able to be calculated because they were a quote unquote soft kill, extremely high. So what is a future method for Bill Gates to make a lot of money? Patents and the royalties. We already saw that with the NIH. We saw that with the CDC. So let's take a look at the patents. Bill Gates doesn't go by Bill Gates when he makes patents. He goes by William Gates. And I'll prove to you that William Gates in Redmond, Washington is Bill Gates. So if we take a look, here's a patent. Patent number 103000136. You could pull this up on Google if you want. It was filed on December 16th, 2014. Date of the patent, May 28th, 2019. Oh, so that was just last year, okay? So it was filed for patent in 2014. That's when Bill Gates started talking about the whole world could be wiped out by a pandemic virus. And then 2019, the patent's filed. It's good now, okay? You can exercise it. Who was assigned the patent? Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that's MIT. And then here's another one, Tokatai. I'm not familiar with them, but MIT, everyone knows MIT. Inventors, Anna Jelinek, or Jack Lennick, and then William Gates. William Gates is Bill Gates, and I'll show you that in a second. Here's another patent. This is not a patent though, this is a publication number, but it's for the same patent. So it's filed May 2nd, 2019, published in October 31st, 2019. So basically this patent that Bill Gates filed back in 2014, once it was about to be released, let's check the dates again. Yeah, once it looked like that patent was almost, done, like we reviewed it, yeah, it's your patent, because patents don't happen overnight. You file your patent, they look into things, and then afterwards they say, yeah, that's your patent, okay? So this patent took Bill Gates about, what, 8 years? No, sorry, so 5 years, my apologies. It took 5 years before this patent was solidified. Just before the patent was solidified, they filed for a publication number. What the publication number is, I'll explain in a second. The publication date, though, is October the 31st. That's really interesting, and you're going to see why. Because when did we have this coronavirus stuff start to boil up? December. The
very end of December, January.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to notice some very close things with these dates here. Remember the date of October for the publication, though. So what exactly is a patent versus a publication? So here's a website that I found. It explains patents versus publications. So basically, if you want to read this yourself, it's kind of lengthy, but I'll just summarize it for you. The first, the idea is patented. So if you come up with an idea, your first step is you patent the idea as soon as you come up with it.
It's yours.
It's yours. Then the second step is the idea is published for scientists to review and propagate the new science through different scientific journals. So first you make sure that it's yours, and then afterwards when you want it to become popular, the reason why you want it to become popular is, let's say you patent a new research into a vaccine. Well, if you're not a pharmaceutical company, you're not going to make the vaccine. You're just going to describe what it is and then what it can do and then how to make it, okay? Then the vaccine company like Merck, for example, they will then take that from you, give you your royalties, and then they will manufacture it, and then you get royalties from your patent, okay? So these are the two steps. So the publication is to get the popularity. The patent is to make sure that it's yours. So here's the most interesting patent that I found. And this was the one with the publication and the patent that I was just quoting. It's micro-molded or 3D printed pulsatile release vaccine formulations. So that sounds technical. May the 2nd, 2019. Formulations are preferably formed of biocompatible, biodegradable polymers. In a preferred embodiment for immunization against polio, antigen is released at the time of administration and 2 or 4 or 6 months thereafter. Okay, so I'm going to show you exactly what this is in a picture. But what I want to explain to you is this is a new type of vaccine delivery. They said it could be used for polio. And this particular patent is talking about a time-released vaccine. So in other words, you know, with hepatitis, you have to go for your first round of shots, your second round of shots, third round of shots. This will do it all for you. So once you get that initial treatment, that treatment will cover you for second and third. It will automatically release those things into your bloodstream. Okay, that's the patent.
Time release.
Time released. So of course, this patent number, there it is at the top. And then the two names I want you to pay attention to, William Gates and Anna Jaclenic. So who is this William Gates? Well, the person who registered the patent was from Redmond, Washington. Where's Redmond? We can see an arrow pointing right here on the right-hand side. Where does Bill Gates live? Down the street from the patent office. Okay, so William Gates is Bill Gates. You can go research this yourself. I looked, I found the right patent. As a matter of fact, when I looked at the team of doctors who were working on this and the engineers, they're connected to him. So yes, he is involved in this patent. So here it is. Here's the technology. We said MIT. MIT was on this patent. We read it. MIT News. Storing digital information below the skin surface. So this is how they're going to deploy the new vaccine. Instead of giving you this painful needle and making children cry, they're going to give you this microscopic thing that looks like four little prongs, but they're so small you can't even see them. As a matter of fact, if you see this thing, it looks like a Band-Aid. It looks like a piece of saran wrap. It's tiny. Effective immunization. Tests using human cadaver, a cadaver is a dead body, tests using human cadaver skin show that the quantum dot patterns could be detected by smartphone cameras up to 5 years of simulated sun exposure.
Wow.
The researchers also tested this vaccination strategy in rats using microneedle patches that delivered the quantum dots along with a polio vaccine. So what does it do? You put the Band-Aid on your skin, these prongs go into you, the vaccine is released. If it needs to be released multiple times, it's time released, and it leaves a tattoo. So it leaves 4 little dots or 6 little dots on your skin. So you can tell who was vaccinated because there will be a mark on their skin. An invisible record. Oh, the other point I want to point out, it says that it can be read by smartphones and smartphone cameras. Why is that important? Well, because if I wanted to have a unique identifier, and I wanted to tell not just who necessarily was vaccinated, but I wanted to tell who you are, I could use that as an identification system. Because I could basically hook that up to something. For example, is everyone familiar with QR codes? No. You'd look at posters, you'd see that little weird squiggly barcode-y looking thing. Yeah, all your phones can read that. So that means all they have to do is install an app on your phone, you stick your hand out, it reads it, and it won't just tell if you've got the vaccine, it will tell who you are. So if we want to put on, for example, your social insurance, maybe your medical records, or if we want to put your banking information in the future, we have to put the thing on you first, but then afterwards, we can then synchronize that ID to a whole bunch of different systems. It's like a barcode. An invisible record. So they tell you right here, it's an invisible record. Several years ago, the MIT team set out to devise a method for recording vaccination information that doesn't require a centralized database or other infrastructure. Many vaccines, such as the vaccines for measles, mumps, and rubella, MMR, require multiple doses, spaced out at certain intervals without accurate records. Children may not receive all their necessary doses. Okay, so give me the pros here, right? So in other words, this is going to save me as a parent from the inconvenience of forgetting one of my children didn't get their third shot of hepatitis. It will just do it all for me. It keeps that record right on their body. To create an on-patient, decentralized medical record, the researchers developed a new type of copper-based quantum dots which emit light near the infrared spectrum. The encapsulation allows the dye to remain in place under the skin after being injected. You're getting a tattoo, right? They're putting dye under your skin. You're getting a tattoo. The researchers designed their dye to be delivered by a microneedle patch rather than a traditional syringe and needle. Such patches are now being developed to deliver vaccines for measles, rubella, and other diseases. And the researchers showed that their dye could be easily incorporated into these patches. When the patch is applied to the skin, the microneedles, which are about 1.5 millimeters long. How big is a millimeter? It's like your fingernail. It's like your fingernail. So there are needles that are 1.5 millimeters long. They partially dissolve, releasing their payload within about 2 minutes. So they put a Band-Aid on you, these little prongs, they release this vaccine into your system in about 2 minutes, and then in 6 months we need the other one, it will just keep doing it. Anna Jakalenik. Okay, so we saw her, she was on the patent. A research scientist at MIT's Koch Institute for Intricate Cancer Research, and Robert Langer, the David H. Koch Institute professor at MIT, are the senior authors of the paper. Well, she was the first name that was listed on that patent. The research was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Koch Institute grant from the National Cancer Institute. So don't tell me that William Gates isn't Bill Gates. They're funding this.
Yeah.
So think how much money, even if Bill Gates doesn't come up with the vaccine, okay, he could still make money with the deployment. Because if they're like, hey, why give kids a needle? Why not give them this new technology? They won't even cry. Put the Band-Aid on, we can tell who took the vaccine, we can keep a record of it, you can even release it for the future. So this is a great system. So whether or not he wins the patent for the vaccine that gets produced for coronavirus, he will likely still win the deployment option, which will be billions and trillions of dollars.
Innovative.
It's very innovative. Storing medical information below the skin surface. When did they release this? December 18th, 2019. Oh, very interesting. So MIT releases their publication to let you know just before this pandemic breaks out that they've got this new deployment system to give you your vaccines. Patent history. So again, we saw Massachusetts Institute of Technology under assignees, Anna Jakalenik. We saw William Gates, that's Bill Gates. Here's another one, Robert S. Langer from Newton, Massachusetts. I'd recommend, if you're interested in this, Google every single one of these doctors' names and learn their specialties. Anna Jakalenik, a researcher scientist at MIT's Koch Institute for an Integrative Cancer Research, and Robert Langer. So he showed up in that MIT article too. So they're the two chief people on this paper. Who is he? Microchip Drug Delivery System. Langer, Robert Samuel, that's him. So what do you mean microchip drug delivery system? If you read this article, you'll find out that he was developing a silicone-based chip where information could go back and forth. So this chip might be a little bit more than just a tattoo that's read by a phone. There's the potential that this thing could actually communicate with computer hardware. So it's like having Bluetooth inside your body. That may not be 100% when they release it. Their patent says so far that it's going to be a dye. It's going to be some kind of electrode that releases this vaccine. But there's the potential, based on this guy as an engineer, that it could be a lot more than that. Something worth looking into. It says, we recently showed that it is possible to fabricate a solid-state silicone microchip in which a number of chemicals or drugs can be stored and released on demand by an external trigger. So in other words, they can push a button externally and then release another vaccine into your body, because there could be multiple vaccines that are on that computer chip.
Wow, that is...
One advantage of this novel controlled release system is that it allows for simultaneous release of multiple drugs in complex release profiles. One can potentially develop a device that can be pre-programmed to deliver a combination of drugs in a predetermined fashion. We believe that this novel delivery technology has broad utility in biomedical area, such as local delivery of anesthetics for pain management, subdermal delivery of vaccines, of course, periodontal delivery of antibiotic and anti-inflammatory agents, localized delivery of anti-tumor and neoplastic agents, gene delivery, delivery of arithmetic agents, to name a few. So this isn't just going to be used for delivering vaccines. It has a broad sense of uses. What concerns me about this is the idea that it can be multiple drugs put on this thing, not just one drug, and then they can time release it, but not just by a time release that does automatically, someone outside of your body triggering this. So imagine some government official or some scientist like Fauci, or how about Robert Redfield, his trustworthiness. He gets to push a button on the 5th of May, maybe pushes a button again in October, and everyone in the United States gets this drug released into their body. This is not science fiction, this is right here. Here's something interesting. I found this from the New Yorker from 1995. Now I always talk about secret societies, and I've noticed so much involvement with secret societies in the coronavirus, and I've noticed a lot of symbolism. People don't like to talk about these things because they think it's just a bunch of fantasy. Well, so far I've shown you a lot of things that should scare you. But at this point, I'm going to show you that there are ties to Bill Gates with members of secret societies, and you will not be able to deny it. This is from the New Yorker from August 7th, 1995. He set up a private dinner between Newt Gingrich and the Microsoft chairman Bill Gates, which happened late last Wednesday in the speaker's office. The two men talked about email, managing change, and about the cost of communications and the cost of regulation. So why I'm bringing this up is because Newt Gingrich is in a secret society. That is public record. So when these two meet up for a dinner like that, I can speculate that perhaps Bill Gates is too. But that speculation gets a lot stronger when an individual like myself, who is in a secret society, you can see that they're passing certain codes. So first I will show you that Newt Gingrich was in a secret society, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of speculation, but not really, as to why I think that Bill Gates is also in a secret society. And the secret society doesn't mean anything. You can join the Freemasons, you can join the Rosicrucians, you can join whatever. That doesn't mean you're doing anything bad. It just means that there's the potential that you could be doing things with secret handshakes, secret gestures that other people in the public will not understand.
And now they're faced with a very real prospect of Donald Trump becoming the leader of the party, and it absolutely drives them crazy. They just cannot imagine sharing. Well, because he's an outsider. He's not them. He's not part of the club. He's uncontrollable. He hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. And I think that they don't see him. They have no idea how to.
Because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
Well, because he's an outsider. He's not them. He's not part of the club. He's not them. He's not part of the club. He's not them. He's not part of the club.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
He's not them. He's not part of the club.
You and I are not in the big club.
Well, because he's an outsider. He's not them. He's not part of the club. He's uncontrollable. He hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. He's uncontrollable. He hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. He hasn't been through the initiation rites. He didn't belong to the secret society. He didn't belong to the secret society. He didn't belong to the secret society. He didn't belong to the secret society.
So when you meet up with someone like Newt Gingrich, you know that you're talking to someone who's in a secret society, okay? So that brings some speculation towards the idea that, is Bill Gates in a secret society as well? I mean, this is the richest man in the world. I think they'd have some interest. So there was a video that came out. It was a docu-series. It was on Netflix. You can watch it right now, actually. It's called Pandemic, and I suggest that you do watch it, because they're trying to program you to accept this coming change. It's funny when you take a look at when the movie was released. If you take a look in the movie, they show the state of Oregon, and they're actually using live footage here. And it says, no HB 3063. What is, oh, I made a typo on the top there. I put 3060. It's 3063, okay? What does that mean exactly? What are they talking about? House Bill 3063 removes the ability of the parent to decline required immunizations against restrictable diseases on behalf of the child for the reason other than the child's indicated medical diagnosis. So as a parent, you can't say for any reason now that your child can't be vaccinated. Now, I think that's kind of important considering seeing how much money is flowing through the hands of these people, how much negligence there was, how much mistakes. They've already rewarded $4 billion worth of injury, and they're telling you that 75 cents out of every dollar that goes towards the vaccine, that's used for paying people off if there is an injury. And keep in mind, they have a separate vaccine court. The reason why you don't hear the court cases is because it doesn't go through the normal court system. You're not going to see this in the newspapers. They have a separate court just for vaccines. You don't have a separate court that's independent for traffic. I mean, yeah, you have the traffic court, but it's still the normal courthouse. I mean, if you go to the provincial court, federal court, right, the Supreme Court, that's one type of court system. But there's not like there's a separate court system for, you know, oh, I had a problem with this, and so me and my spouse are going to go to this court. No, but there is for vaccines. That to you should alarm you. And the fact that you're paying for it. You would think that if a vaccine was manufactured and injured someone, and someone like Johnson & Johnson, Bayer, or Merck, and they made $4 billion, $10 billion, you would think they would have to pay for any of those injuries. No, it's the government through your tax dollars that pays for this. So obviously Big Pharma, a lot of people talk bad things about Big Pharma. Now you can see why. It says, what would the bill have done? Remove parents' ability to immunize their children for religious, philosophical, or any other non-medical reason. So that means it is up to basically the NIH, the CDC, your doctor, maybe if he has enough power, to say, no, this child can't have this because of such and such a reason. Otherwise, you're getting that shot. Now, do you know what's really interesting about this? I didn't include this because I don't have enough time, but some people have obviously heard about the Nuremberg trials. The Nuremberg trials that happened after the Second World War. You can think of them as like the Nazi trials. They say that because there was a lot of bad medicine being practiced. The Nuremberg trials were also known as the doctor trials. There were 23 doctors that were trialed in Germany by the United States. And what they found was 7 doctors were hung, they were killed, 7 doctors were put in jail for life, and the other 7 were released because they found them to be not guilty. That means that 2/3 of the doctors that were involved with the Nuremberg trials, they were what? Either put in prison or killed. What was the reason? They were doing testing on people without their consent. That is exactly what this is. And as of 2005, UNESCO, which is another branch of the United Nations, UNESCO said in Article 6, Section 1, if you go to UNESCO's website, check Article 6, Section 1, what you will find is that in 2005, UNESCO decided that it is completely against your rights humanitarily to have a vaccine pushed on you. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to say yes and then change your mind later. They can't put any pressures on your consent. But that's exactly what government's trying to do right now, which I find very interesting because, like, you know, the last time you guys tried to do this, you guys were hung at the gallows. So I wonder, are these laws going to stand, or are these laws going to be rewritten before they start to try to push mandatory vaccination? Because if that's a plan of theirs, there are 3 different things they have to get rid of. In 1931, there was something called the Berlin Code. The Berlin Code was something where they decided that the German physicians, because Germany was very advanced for their medical practices, German physicians were forced to absolutely grab consent of their patients for any medical procedure, and if not, they would be challenged through the Berlin Code. Then that was broken. Later came the Nuremberg trials. Before that, there was something called the first directive of the Prussian medical director. Regardless, there's 3 different laws that protect you presently, right now. One from the 1800s, one from 1930, and one from after the Second World War. They will have to rewrite those 3 laws before they can force you to have a vaccine. So just keep that in mind. At the moment, you still are safe, but if they rewrite those, you have a problem. Here's something that I found really interesting. When Netflix released the movie Pandemic, guess who was the hero? Well, Bill Gates. He was the millionaire. And keep in mind, this movie was made in 2019. So this came out before the epidemic, okay? Before the pandemic. So this movie came out in 2019, and this movie was basically about a what-if situation if the whole world was to be in this pandemic crisis. Conveniently, a year later, we are. Now, in this movie, Bill Gates gets to be the hero because he funded all the drug companies to research the vaccine that saved the world. What I found interesting was this child in the movie. Keep in mind, it's a movie. They can put this however they want. This star that says not vaccinated, it's a 6-pointed star, just like what you heard in Nazi Germany. Didn't the Jews at the concentration camps have to wear a star on them? So here we see the 6-pointed star, except it's not a 6-pointed star, is it? Conveniently, they bent down one corner of the star, which makes it a 5-pointed star or a 5-pointed upside down star. So when you ask me what kind of occult symbols do I see, I can show you thousands. I didn't bother to do it for this, this Sabbath study because I want to focus on information. If you want me to do a lesson showing you all the occult symbolism that you don't see, it will probably freak you out because these secret societies are putting symbols like this everywhere, and it's attention to detail. That's the only way you notice it. So here's something interesting. Who's the other richest person in the world? Well, Warren Buffett. A trustee, along with Bill and Melinda Gates. Warren Buffett is a foundation trustee. So this is right on gatesfoundation.org. So what's a trustee? A trustee is a person or a firm that holds and administers property or assets for the benefits of a third party. So then Warren Buffett gets to manage whose money? Bill Gates. Okay, so obviously those two are very connected. So they're the two richest people in the world on paper at least. And then they're both colluding with each other, working through which organization? The Gates Foundation. And if you remember back, I think it was around 2005 or 2007, sorry, Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, and Bill Gates all swore that they would reinvest all their billions of dollars towards helping in philanthropy. Obviously, that is a front. That's a cover, okay? Because we know what Bill Gates is up to. So interestingly enough, now he's combined with who? Mark Zuckerberg and then Warren Buffett. So what if they're all three of them are doing the exact same thing? They pretend that they're donating to philanthropy when really what they're trying to do is get a tax break. And Bill Gates has got it down to an art, obviously. So then he takes the two others under his wing. I'll take young little Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook. I'll bring you under my wing. I'll show you how you can save a bunch of money and look like a great guy. And then I'll take you, Warren Buffett. I mean, you never really had a bad image to begin with, but I'll make you look even better because people will have more faith and more trust in you if all of a sudden you're this guy that just gives away all this money. Okay, so they're all pulling the same racket. If we take a look in this Netflix video, we can see this very odd piece of furniture. I mean, when you notice that in the backgrounds of videos, you're probably paying attention to the foreground. People like myself, I'm looking for the devil in the details. I'm looking for their secret society symbols. So here I can see there's this weird looking pyramid structure that they have as a shelf. I'm not saying that you couldn't buy this. Maybe if you looked around some weird corner of IKEA, you could find this. I've personally never seen this. But when you see this stuff stand out, you have to recognize that these are some of the symbols that the secret societies use. This symbol in religion was called the tetragrammaton. As we can see, Warren Buffett is doing this symbol with his hands. This symbol is much older than I am. This symbol goes back thousands of years. You're like, well, it's just a triangle. Yeah, but it's a triangle with an eye, as you can see on Warren Buffett's book called Management Secrets. I wonder what the secret is. You can see the all-seeing eye right inside the triangle. So you can't pretend like it's not connected to that triangle with an eye that you see on your American money. And obviously, who are the founding fathers? The founding fathers were Freemasons. We've proven this. So if the founding fathers are Freemasons, you'd probably see Masonic symbols on your money, and then we can see those Masonic symbols showing up with people that are involved in those societies. Now, that doesn't mean that all Masons are bad, but some of them, I mean, they're just people. It's possible to go into Freemasonry, learn about some of their secrets, some of their gestures, some of their hand signs, and then use it for evil. That's what I think these people are doing. We can see it on the money. If you take a look at the money, it says Annuit Coeptis Novus Ordo Seclorum. Does anyone know what Novus Ordo Seclorum means?
Order society.
It means new order of the ages. Okay, new order of the ages. Some people have attributed this to New World Order. It doesn't actually say New World Order. Novus Ordo Seclorum says new order of the ages. So what's an age? Well, that's a zodiac sign. Okay, so one age might be Pisces. What's the sign that comes after Pisces? Aquarius. So we're living in the age of Aquarius. We started in the age of Aquarius in 2012. There's been a lot of radical changes since 2000, but there's been even more radical changes that came after 2012. So people in these weird societies, they had this idea that after we entered the age of Aquarius, we were going to go into this new age. And at the top here, see where it says Annuit Coeptus? I know what coeptus, right above where the triangle is?
Yeah.
Basically means God approves. Our Lord approves, or our God approves. So our God approves of a new order of the ages. And right on the money it says, in God we trust. Well, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, I've read the Bible, I don't recall the pyramids, the all-seeing eyes. Where did you guys get these symbols from? Well, we know the pyramids came from Egypt. So the first question you should ask is, which God are you guys trusting in? Right? Which God are you trusting in? Because you wrote right on the money. You wrote, God approves of our new order of the ages. And then you have this pyramid. And what else is interesting is this. Some people have been smart enough to actually draw the six-pointed star on the pyramid. If you draw the six-pointed star, what you'll find is the star will touch on the M, the A, the S, the O, and the N. You can even see as I draw my mouse, I'm making a six-pointed star. So what does that spell? It spells Mason. Okay, so right on the money, when you drew the six-pointed star, you get the word Mason. This is very interesting. But take a look at this. This symbol wasn't unfamiliar to Hitler. So if you're going to see a worldwide takeover, what did Hitler want to do? He wanted a Third Reich. What is a Third Reich? Well, Germany never had a First and Second Reich. So what's the Third Reich? You had the Roman Empire, then the Roman Empire was split into East and West. And then you had the Holy Roman Empire, and then all of a sudden Rome just disappeared off the maps. All of a sudden in the 1700s, late 1700s, the Holy Roman Empire was no longer on the maps. It just disappeared one day. There was no war, okay? But then all of a sudden Hitler comes along in the 40s and says, I want to have a Third Reich. Yeah, you want to see a Third Roman Empire. So in Rome, you had citizens. Across the planet, we have citizens. Citizen came from Greek and Rome. That was the systems of government that came from those places. And Rome conquered Greece. And so when Hitler came to power, there was a lot of power that was given to him from the Roman Catholics. That's why you see so many pictures of Roman Catholic priests with Hitler and the Nazis. I'm not saying that the Roman Catholics are Nazis. I'm saying that's where some of the money came from. And of course, where you have religion, you're going to have religious ideologies. Does this symbol that they're doing exist in the Catholic Church? Yes. They're all over Europe. You can go into different Catholic churches. I can show you pictures in St. Peter's Basilica. This triangle with an eye exists in the Catholic Church. As opposed to get you to believe me, I'm just going to show you. So when you look at this, you have to understand whether you believe in Bible, whether you believe in God, whether you don't, it makes no difference. They do. They clearly believe in something. So it's some kind of a religious movement. And I'll also point out the fact that Hitler, you can see the pictures of Hitler with the Roman Catholics. And again, this is no slam against Roman Catholics. It's not what this is about. It's just understanding the bigger picture. Thule had to do with the Aryans when Hitler talked about the Aryans. Look at the logo of the Thule Society. It looks like the swastika. It's slightly different. This one's circular. Hitler had a square. Thule Society was a German occultist and Bolshevik group founded in Munich after the First World War, named after a mythical northern country in Greek legend. The society is chiefly notable as the organization that sponsored the Deutsche Arbeiterparty, the Germans' Worker Party, which was later reorganized by Adolf Hitler into the National Socialist Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. So where did the money come from for the Nazi Party? From Thule, but also the Catholic Church. This is where all their power came from. And this is a religious kind of a front. So I'm speculating, but not really, that these men are the continuation of this. You see, people can die, but their ideas do not.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories about Bill Gates because he's a really rich guy who tries to influence everything on the planet. I mean, the guy really sticks his nose in everyone's business everywhere. I'm not saying he's not smart, but he really thinks he knows what's best for everyone on the entire planet. So, some of the conspiracy theories about Bill Gates include hidden code in Microsoft Windows that proclaims Gates is the Antichrist. He does a lot of work with vaccines, right? So people say he's trying to control world population that way. Some people even accuse Gates of funding Ebola. Others say he's trying to indoctrinate our children into his vision of the world through his Common Core education initiative. You name a conspiracy theory, someone will tie it to Bill Gates. And when it comes to the theory about a new world order, Bill Gates just made it really easy for conspiracists to believe that he's a part of that too, because he basically just said he agrees with it. You know the New World Order theory, right? That a secretive, powerful, elite group of globalists are conspiring to rule the world through one centralized government. So, Gates was talking about the UN recently with a German newspaper, saying how basically the UN sucks, and I can't disagree with him there. He said the UN is great for preparing for war, but that it basically sucks for anything else, like preparing for global disease outbreaks. And then he went on to say, quote, "If there were such a thing as a world government, we would be better prepared." Boom! He flat out said why he thinks we need a new global world order. You're welcome, conspiracy theorists. Now, this is no surprise, really, but it's refreshing for Gates to just come out and say it. That also might be why his company Microsoft just came out with the first middle finger emoji. I wish I could do it, but I can't. Apple and Android, they don't have one yet, but Microsoft actually has an FU emoji right now. Maybe that's just Gates' way of flipping off the world as he outwardly embraces a new world order. But honestly, there's no denying that's where we're headed anyway, right? Humanity is becoming one global organism ever faster in today's plugged-in world. We can't help ourselves from progressing that way, obviously. Look what we're doing. And so fine, whatever humanity, go form one global thing. We're gonna do it anyway. I just hope that whoever ends up ruling that isn't some rich lefty liberal who thinks he knows what's best for everyone and everything just because he built a damn computer. That's not the new world order I'm looking for. I'm the resident. Tonight, let's talk about that.
So here's a piece a lot of people do or do not know about involving the coronavirus, which is called Event 201. Event 201 absolutely shocked me. The first time I heard about this, I thought it was a joke. I didn't believe it until I looked into it. Event 201, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and, of course, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation hosted Event 201 in a high-level pandemic exercise on October 18th, 2019 in New York, New York. Okay, so let me get this straight. You have a movie called Pandemic that comes out, where Bill Gates is the hero developing the vaccine. You've created this chip system that can basically give us immunization, and it's this new high-tech thing where we don't even need a needle, and that just got finished in October. And also in October, you planned a high-level pandemic with Johns Hopkins University, which is working with the public health right now in the NIH, and this was worked with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You can't make this up. So I'm going to show you some of the footage from that. So first, the statement. Of course, people are like, you know, imagine you hear about this for the first time and you think, well, what's going on here? Are you telling me that the coronavirus comes out in 2020 and you guys just ran this pandemic drill just a couple months before that? A lot of people were asking questions. So they put a statement on their website. It says, statement about the new novel coronavirus and our pandemic exercise. In October 2019, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security hosted a pandemic tabletop exercise called Event 201 with partners, World Economic Forum, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Recently, the Center for Health Security has received questions about whether that pandemic exercise predicted the current novel coronavirus outbreak in China. Okay, to be clear, the Center for Health Security and partners did not make a prediction during our tabletop exercise. For the scenario, we modeled a fictional coronavirus pandemic. So it wasn't even a different type of disease. They actually modeled a coronavirus pandemic in October. Okay, same faces you see right now. But we explicitly stated that it is not a prediction. Instead, the exercise served to highlight preparedness and response challenges that would likely arise in a very severe pandemic. We are not now predicting that the novel coronavirus 2019 outbreak will kill 65 million people, because in their tabletop exercise, they said 65 million people would die. Although our tabletop exercise included a mock novel coronavirus, the inputs we used for modeling the potential impact of that fictional virus are not similar to the novel coronavirus. So yeah, we had a pandemic exercise. Yeah, it was in 2019 in October. Yes, Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum was there. And yes, it was a new type of coronavirus, but it was different than the one we have today. Do you know how sketchy that sounds? And you wonder why people look at this and like, yeah, you wonder why there's debate on whether they're going to take the vaccine or not going to take the vaccine. I bet you the people that don't want to take the vaccine, they don't even know a quarter of this information that I gave you in regards to how the vaccine industry works. If they did, they would be terrified and marching on government probably immediately. But to see this in combination with that, yeah, that's just absurd. So here's their promotion. So first you're going to see a clip from 2015 of Bill Gates predicting some kind of a disease that we would get. And then you're going to see their exercise from October of 2019.
We've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic. We're not ready for the next epidemic.
In April 2015, following the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, co-founder of Microsoft Corporation Bill Gates had predicted that the world would struggle to cope with a highly infectious virus and also warned about its dangers.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree, unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
We have known about CAPS-like viruses in animals and people for decades, but have not been successful at developing a licensed vaccine. And sure, there are new technologies that may help, but it's going to be difficult. I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
So the policy crisis in question for this board in this meeting is this: how should governments, business, and international organizations allocate and distribute pandemic antivirals and medical supplies to the people who need them most?
This was all done in October. This looks like live footage of what we're going through right now. But I mean, hey, maybe I'm just being a little bit too skeptical here. Maybe it's all just coincidental. But this is a lot of coincidence. So Netflix releases pandemic docuseries. Keep in mind, this released this released in January of 2020, just before basically we had the huge outbreak. As a matter of fact, I think Jillian, I think that your mom was still in Arizona at that time. Yeah, so they released this movie at that time when it first started to kind of bubble up, right? Then in March, they all send us home. But keep in mind, you can't make a movie in a day. So this movie would have been made in either 2018 or 2019. Okay, and then released in January of 2020. And this is where I saw that upside down star in the main image. The rest of the series follows Glanville and his principal scientist, Zara Ives, after they apply for a grant created by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the CEO of Alphabet, which is Google. So again, here's more attention to Bill Gates. He's going to save the world by giving some of his money to all these different drug manufacturers to make the vaccine, It's like they're trying to program you to take something that is going to be made, like I said, the quickest vaccine ever. And I'm sure looking at like the track record of all this weird stuff that was going on in the CDC and the NIH, I'm sure a lot of people are going to make money. It's going to be the biggest cash cow ever. And I don't know how safe it's going to be considering how quickly they're going to make it. Here's a clip from the movie.
100 years ago, a deadly influenza virus infected hundreds of millions of people, somewhere in the order of 50 to 100 million deaths. When we talk about another flu pandemic happening, it's not a matter of if, but when.
A new strain of bird flu.
This is definitely one of the most lethal influenza viruses that we have seen so far.
It just takes one person to start an outbreak.
It will leave its mark. The result would be hundreds of millions of people that would likely die. That's why I do what I do.
We're making a vaccine that could treat all future versions of flu.
This vaccine could eradicate influenza as we know it.
The problem's so widespread, the World Health Organization is calling the refusal to vaccinate one of the biggest threats of 2019.
A healthy child has the ability to build up immunity naturally. I know that what I do is important to my patients, but what am I doing to myself and my family? Within 1 month, the virus can spread throughout the country. A month after that, widespread throughout the world. The next pandemic is going to start, and we just don't know where or how, but we know it will.
That poses an existential threat to us as a species.
Watching the stuff makes me feel like I'm living in some kind of a dystopian nightmare, because I see friends and neighbors that know bits and pieces of just little chunks of news they hear, but they don't know the whole big picture. I don't think if everyone out there knew everything that was in what we've presented today, even 50% of it, I don't think they'd have the opinions that they have. Because I hear a lot of things that people say and comments people make. I can tell, okay, you're kind of parroting the talking points of these different organizations that have a lot of buy-in to this bias because they're making a lot of money. The media agencies, if you think about it, let's look at it from different perspectives here. What do the hospitals have to benefit? Well, they were underfunded. So if they can basically get more money from the government because of all this extra relief funding, well, then their hospitals can get improvements or they can get new equipment. So there's a bias. Another bias might be, what about the media agencies? Well, if everyone's calling news fake news and no one's really watching or caring so much anymore, all of a sudden when you have this pandemic, what are you going to look towards? Oh, we got to check out the news again. So now the media companies, of course, they're bought into this. What about the businesses? Well, you had 150 CEOs step down last year and sell their shares. That was the biggest recorded amount in history, as if they knew that this big tidal wave was coming. So for them, it's a great opportunity to make a bunch of money. If anyone knows anything about investing, if you were smart and you saw that dip was coming, then you would pull your money out before March the 12th and then put it back in after March the 12th, because in the month of May, what did it do? Or sorry, April, it made a 30% increase. So you could have been the biggest dummy with your stocks. Wouldn't matter what you invested in. If you took your money out just before, let's say even March the 5th, okay, or earlier, and then you put your money in after the third week, or anytime after the third week of March, you were guaranteed to make 30% on pretty much anything, because the Dow dropped, the S&P dropped, they all dropped. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons. And we look at the NIH. What would the NIH's bias be? Well, if the vaccine, doesn't matter who distributes it, the NIH is going to make tons of money. The CDC is going to make tons of money. And all these people get to look like superstars, because I'm sure no one knew who Robert Redfield was. I'm sure no one knew who Dr. Fauci was. And now all of a sudden they're going to be the center of attention. Their wages are going to skyrocket. And if they have any patents for any of the stuff that's going to be produced, they're all going to make oodles and oodles and oodles of money. And the government as well. Because remember, if the NIH is making money, that's actually the US government making money. Why? Because the NIH is a body of the US government. It's a government organization. It'd be like saying Alberta Forestry or Canada Forests or Canadian Fisheries. If they start to make a whole bunch of money, that's really money that goes into the GDP. So here's an interesting thing I caught. It's called Make It. Bill Gates, 6 movies and TV shows to watch when you need a break. So halfway through the coronavirus, so this is May the 28th, Bill Gates comes out with a bunch of movies you can watch to help distress yourself. How about this one? Pandemic, How to Prevent an Outbreak. So the movie clip I just showed you, he's recommending that you all go and see this. Why? So you're all going to be pro taking whatever stupid vaccine they come out with. It says, in fact, Gates Foundation has funded one of the influenza vaccine startups featured in the movie Pandemic, How to Prevent an Outbreak. So Pandemic isn't a fictional movie. Some parts are fiction, some parts are true, because they're using real footage of people protesting in Oregon. And then you can also see that one of the vaccine companies that was shown in the movie Bill Gates is funding it, and they're actually making a vaccine for the coronavirus. So funny, in the movie, it was fictional, but in real life, yeah, they're one of the 100 companies that are all racing to make $1 trillion. That's how much it's going to be, just so you know. Whatever company comes up with the patent for this virus, $1 trillion. This movie was called The Next Pandemic. When did it come out? 2018. If you're not worried about looming global pandemic, you probably should be. Are we prepared for an outbreak? Bill Gates and other experts weigh in. It's so hilarious to see how often this guy's name shows up, and such a great philanthropist that keeps doubling his earnings. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings and his wife Patty Quillen donate $30 million to vaccine.org. So in case you're wondering what the bias of Netflix is, well, if Netflix is donating money to vaccine.org, do you know who vaccine.org is? Gavi. And Gavi is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation again. So Netflix is sending money to the richest men in the world, probably as a thank you, because my guess is that when Netflix couldn't get money to get started, who gave them money? Likely it was Bill and Melinda Gates. Netflix was trying to get money when they were first starting out in the early 2000s. No one would give them money. And now all of a sudden, Netflix is one of those dominating forces on television, which would be great for pushing out propaganda. So here it looks like Netflix is giving a little bit of money back to the person that helped them out. Netflix chief Reed Hastings and his wife Patty Quillen donated $30 million to Gavi Alliance, the nonprofit immunization organization started by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I see a lot of bias. I see a lot of conflict of interest. I mean, I see nothing but conflict of interest with Bill Gates. I see nothing but conflict of interest with the CDC. I see the NIH making money off of things that are also conflict of interest because their doctors are making money from patents and the rest of it goes to the NIH. So there's actually so much more I could go into, and I can't because, I mean, we've covered so much information today, so I'm going to leave it here. We'll do a Bible reading. But I just want to say that I haven't even touched on the economy yet. Just to let you know, the topic that I am most passionate about isn't Bill Gates. It isn't the CDC. I had these opinions and feelings for a long time because I knew this information. I made this stuff for other people because I know a lot of people don't know these details. My passion is actually talking about how they screwed us on the economy, because what you're about to see is the largest transference of wealth in all of human history. What they're doing right now, while you're not paying attention to the money scheme, is you're paying attention to the virus and the implications of the virus, not understanding that the death toll from what they're doing right now to the economy, with us not working, that in the upcoming month, if not couple of years, it's going to hurt us way more, I think, than the virus ever could.
For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of the dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Brothers and sisters, the sword is coming. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. That at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow.